Senator Pat Toomey, a Republican, tells me on the record nothing's going to change in Pennsylvania. And Republican leaders on Capitol Hill this week have been pretty quiet, not fighting the president, but not endorsing him in any big way. And in the states, there are calls for integrity. Here, for example, is Georgia's Republican Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, earlier today.
I live by the motto that numbers don't lie. As Secretary of State, I believe that the numbers that we have presented today are correct. The numbers reflect the verdict of the people, not a decision by the Secretary of State's office or of courts or of either campaigns.
Peter, from Raffensperger to Toomey to Leader McConnell, what is going on inside the Republican Party?
Well, look, in some ways, that's the biggest story about what's going on here, right? Is any of us surprised that Donald Trump is not accepting defeat? No, we shouldn't be surprised by that. He told us that for months. He told us that for months that any election result other than a victory for him, he would characterize as somehow rigged. So he let us know what he was going to do. It's not surprising in that sense. It is a little bit interesting to watch these Republicans, though, trying to navigate this. I think that they originally thought that they could kind of give the president some room to sort of lash out for a little while, and eventually reality would hit and he would come around. But so far, it hasn't happened. I think you're seeing some impatience now among Republicans on Capitol Hill, that the feeling that they're beginning this is beginning to go on so long that it's doing damage to not just the president and the system, but to themselves and to the Republican Party in the long run. And you're seeing, bit by bit, slowly by slowly, that impatience coming out. Whether that will lead to something in the next few days or the next week of a more direct kind of intervention, I'm not sure. That's what they're talking about. Is there a way to intervene with this president? But there hasn't been a Barry Goldwater and a John Rhodes, kind of moment that we've seen in the last few weeks. That's for sure.
Peter, you just referenced Goldwater going to Nixon in 1974. I'm reading your book about Jim Baker. Who would intervene with President Trump? Is there a James Baker in this Republican Party who could pull President Trump aside? Senator Romney's spoken out. Is there anyone else who could play that Baker role?
Well, the problem is there is no James Baker today in the Republican Party. It's a different kind of party. It's a different kind of president. It's a president who's not really all that interested in listening to people who have any point of view other than his own. Remember, when his own DHS official in charge of election security said the election was secure, the president this week just fired him. He doesn't want to hear anybody tell him anything other than what he believes. And so, the only person I think with the kind of weight to really go to him and have any possible impact would probably be Mitch McConnell. And it would have to be, of course, with the backing of the Senate Republican caucus, which, of course, Mitch McConnell would never do unless he did have that backing. Mitt Romney is not going to be able to be persuasive with the president. Certainly Susan Collins and these others who have talked about the president moving on don't have that kind of influence with him. But Mitch McConnell is probably the one person with that kind of weight, assuming he were to go in with the support of his caucus.
Well, Asma, McConnell's still waiting for these Georgia Senate runoffs to take place in January. What does this all mean for those two races in Georgia? Do your Democratic sources perhaps see an opening for the party to run against the president's conduct?
I mean, that is certainly what Democrats are hoping for in the state of Georgia. I think, the challenge is, though, that while this is all going on in the background, we saw that the vice president, Mike Pence, was campaigning for those Senate runoffs in the state of Georgia today. So, in many ways, I would argue the sort of longevity of this drawn-out process that the president has put in the face of Republican-based voters is, in their view, advantageous to what's going on in the state of Georgia. I will say most Democrats, candidly, are not particularly optimistic about the odds. You talk to them about the Senate, and they will say it will be a challenge. And I think there is a widespread recognition in the Democratic Party that Joe Biden will likely have to deal with divided government. I mean, that is sort of the conventional wisdom amongst most Democrats.
And I wrote this week for the Post about how Georgia Senator David Perdue, on a private phone call with donors, said maybe he and Senator Loeffler down there are going to have to be, quote, alone, that they can't count on President Trump, like Vice President Pence today, to come down to Georgia to get involved, to boost Republicans down there. Paula, I saw you nodding. You want to jump in for a moment?
Absolutely. The president has showed no interest in doing anything other than remaining here at the White House and tweeting. Even his Thanksgiving plans were canceled. Something as significant as control of the Senate. Today, the vice president said, look, this may be all we have to protect our legacy and to protect what we've done. It's so important. But at this point, there's no indication that the president's really going to throw his weight behind this effort.